Hey everybody, welcome to today's video. Today we're breaking down the order from Maduro, the president of Venezuela, saying that the Venezuelan Navy will now be escorting all these different oil tankers. So the US basically had impunity taking down that first couple oil tankers, seizing those, but now it looks like the Venezuelan Navy is going to try to put up some resistance. So the US Navy now is going to have to adapt a little bit with that, slight resistance that's going to come from the Venezuelan Navy. So we'll cover what that resistance might look like, how the Navy might approach that, and what we'll see moving forward here in the next few weeks. I'll analyze some of the ports and the areas in Venezuela on where the forces might be building up and why. So let's just dive right in. So I'll talk to you about La Guaira. This is one of the main ports when it comes to Caracas. So Maduro lives in Caracas. That's the heart of the government of the Maduro regime. And here is La Guaira. So you've got this port here. It's just at the very north of Caracas. And this port, guys, has been linked to Iranian armed shipments. It's no secret that Iranian armed shipments used to come in and out. Now with this naval blockade, likely zero, or likely not as many. If some sneak through, okay, but they're not coming through on the big ships that they used to. And then the oil tankers that are going to be here, likely we're going to see a naval buildup in and around this port as the Venezuelan Navy thinks that they are going to escort all these ships that are going to be trying to get the oil to the customer. So the Maduro regime, this just shows how sensitive the Maduro regime is to shutting off this oil and how important it is for them to keep a stronghold on the black oil market, because they need to sell this oil to China, to Iran, to keep the flow going to the cartel essentially in Venezuela that's running the government. When you think of Maduro's inner regime, this is something that it's kind of like it's warfare 101, but you have to keep your inner circle happy as a dictator. You have to make sure your inner circle is getting paid out, they're getting everything they want, because you're kind of surrounded by thugs. So you have to be very careful when you're in Maduro's position. So getting millions of dollars a month into that inner circle is likely one of the main things that's keeping him from being ousted by that inner circle itself. When you think about how cartels work, a lot of it is you got to keep everybody happy, you got to keep everybody getting exactly what they want for you to stay in power. So when I think of the regime, I think back to, some operations going down on the black market where you just got to keep the money flowing in, and the administration knows that. So that's why I think a lot of the pinch is happening, and that's why Maduro is countering back. As you can see, not backing down, but escalation, right? And this is kind of something we've talked about over the last couple of weeks. What I see from Maduro, what I see from the regime is full-on escalation. It looks like no talks of actually figuring this out diplomatically. Maybe Maduro coming into the fold, maybe continuously thinking that he can do what he's doing, continuously shipping drugs to the US. Is that something that he's willing to stop? It doesn't seem like it. But again, if you're tied to cartel networks, you really don't have the option to negotiate on your own behalf. You have to do what, the bosses around you say, or you're going to get killed. And Maduro likely knows that. But that's that port right there, La Guaira. So the Venezuelan Navy likely will be centered on this area right here. They'll probably bring in assets that they have from other places along the coast. And I like to think of this as kind of like a retreat strategy where they try to get everything in to protect themselves. They try to pull everything in, protect the Maduro regime, protect their ability to try to get some of this funding. And that is kind of what the Maduro regime is focused on. And that's why they're bringing their Navy in. So they're pulling a fleet that's been defending coastal stuff all around the area, and they're not going to span as large of an area. They've got 25,000 people in the Navy. Venezuela's Navy isn't tiny. It's not massive, but it's also not tiny. So 25,000 people, and now if they focus in on this area right here, again, they're going to focus in on the regime. They're going to focus in on protecting their fiefdom. And so that main port will likely be the main one that the Venezuelan Navy focuses on protecting. A little bit here, just kind of what we're seeing. I like to kind of scan through this. Let's see. In a hypothetical naval war near Venezuela, the U.S. would likely have an advantage. Yes, thank you. Its Navy globally ranks with 11 carriers, super tech, and nearby bases for quick deployment. Yeah, logistical hurdles, but at the same time, the U.S. Navy was built for this, so not going to be a tough deal here. This is something else that was posted, kind of a hype video for the U.S. Navy. This is, basically showing the U.S. Navy now will have some resistance, which is interesting because that's what they were made for. So some of the air power that's out there, some of the sea power that's out there in the Caribbean right now, just showing you guys that. Awesome. F-18s. Wow. So you got this entire massive buildup of the Navy on the likes of what we haven't seen before. And this is what Maduro is saying, he's going to send his Navy up against. So again, I just like to give you guys a perspective on, what our Navy's bringing to the fight, what Maduro's bringing to the fight, and a lot of the rhetoric that's going down. Basically him saying that he can stand up to the U.S. Navy. That's probably an SM-2 missile. Launching, those things can take down ships, they can take down cruise missiles, they can take down drones. Got the F-18 looking strong by the pool. Beautiful. F-18 is just it's an amazingly well-flying jet at slow speeds, which is something that not a lot of jets are when you get into supersonic jets like that. Okay, we covered a little bit of kind of what's being talked about. There's a little bit of history with the Venezuelan Navy. It was a coastal defense force. That's how it started. We've covered that before. And then obviously now they're activating them, saying that they are going to take down the U.S. Navy. I mean, it's just kind of, it's a little bit interesting, but I don't want to discount the enemy at the same time, right? Like, you can't underestimate, because one lucky shot, say a Su-30 gets airborne, gets its KH-101 Russian cruise missile, anti-ship missile off against the carrier, and now you're in a world of hurt. And that's just not something that the U.S. Navy is willing to risk. So I don't believe the U.S. Navy is going to discount this threat at all. I think they're going to see them, they're going to start especially with seeing them as a near-peer adversary until proven otherwise. And that's how the military works, is basically back to the fundamentals. Make sure that your fundamentals are always sound. Do the fundamentals over and over again extremely well. That's just the move when it comes to how to approach any enemy, no matter how big, no matter how small. You gotta practice like you fight. You gotta continuously every day bring your A game when you're up against a golden BB that could take down one of these massive naval ships, and that would be a disaster. So you can't have that happen. So on the Venezuelan end, 25,000 people is what we talked about them having. So not a small Navy. I mean, they've got a decent amount of people. They've got patrol boats. They've also got those missiles we've talked about, anti-ship missiles from Russia that could team up for scrappy responses. You got to be aware that a scrappy response could come from this Navy. Even though you might think that they don't have the ability to do it, you can't discount them. But they've got some offshore patrol vessels. That's one of their main things that they use. Again, think Coastal Defense Force. They've got the BVL-21 Guaycacudo, and those are workhorses. They're 2,400-pound vessels. They hit about 20 knots. They're used for patrols, and they can be out for about 2 weeks without any type of refueling. They've got 76 millimeter OTO Melara guns that can fire 1,000 rounds a minute. So again, they've got the ability to put up some resistance, and you have to be careful, especially if we think of special operations teams. We think of any of our vessels getting close. You have to know they could just open fire at any time. Itchy trigger fingers. That's what we're seeing in this area. They supposedly also have radar and electro-optical systems that can hit targets, is what they're claiming, out to about 5 nautical miles or so, which isn't nothing. Again, you got to keep that in mind. They also have, supposedly, this is something that Iran has a lot of. Quick coffee break, but Iran has the C-802 Noor missile. It's an Iranian missile that they have likely exported to Venezuela. So the U.S. Navy has dug in likely to all the different intel on what weapon systems that Maduro could bring to the fight. However, that Noor missile could be an anti-ship missile. So it's an originally Chinese designed missile, and the Noor was basically built to harpoon ships. That's what its main thing was. So that Noor missile, I look at it like a KH-101, the Russian version of a anti-ship missile. Noor missile, now you've got the Iranian versions. You've got multiple tech from multiple countries that could be used to take out ships. So those things skim the waves. That's one of the biggest advantages that they have at near supersonic speeds, and they can likely go about 50 nautical miles, maybe even more, because Iran lately has been very focused on advancing their propulsion. So you can't discount those Noor missiles. Probably the second biggest threat, except for the KH-101 from Russia. And then they've got Igla-S shoulder-fired missiles. That's one of the big things that they focus on, the man pads. They've got decoy launchers likely to throw off incoming fire. They've got a lot of decoy and deception operations going on. So some of their surface-to-air missile batteries, likely a lot of them along the coast, aren't actually going to be operatable surface-to-air missile batteries. They're spoofers that they're hoping that the blue forces, U.S. forces, will glom off on and focus on that, like the Growlers going up there. That they see, or I'd say it's the RQ-4, one of those advanced drones that sees a swath of all these different SAM systems, and then they waste their missiles, they retarget assets onto the wrong thing. I mean, it's Deception 101, and that's kind of that's Venezuela, that's how they work. That's how cartels work. So you got to think you're kind of going up against a little mini CIA operation when I think about this complete regime, what they're going to be doing. A lot of guerrilla warfare type stuff. Again, sensor-wise, they've got a Thales radar on some of their different ships. Those can scan out. They're like maritime radars, thinking about 20 nautical miles, 30 nautical miles or so. But the fleet is getting old. The fleet is very old. Their maintenance is spotty. Everything's kind of running at max. I was going to say Max Afterburner. That'd be amazing. Can we get a ship that has an afterburner on it, please? I don't ask for much, guys. I just want a freaking ship with afterburner. Insert Dr. Evil meme right here. Sharks with freaking laser beams. But these boats, they are running at max capacity at this point. They're running to the point where they were rusty before. The maintenance on them wasn't great before. And now you turn it up to 11 because we've got this situation where they're now going to be trying to escort all their oil tankers. So we're really going to see what this maintenance is like, what goes down, how it operates, how these ships operate when they're at a high operational tempo. And operational tempo, when you start to crank it up to 11, that's when you really see the weak spots. And so when it comes to the weak spots in these ships, it's going to be pretty obvious, I think. They don't supposedly have any built-in helo capability off of their ships, which hurts because it gives them less of an ability to go out and spot any type of adversaries, the U.S. that's coming in towards them. They probably have now updated to have drones. So I would say that they probably have some shoulder-launched drones, some relatively large-sized quadcopter drones that they might be using for reconnaissance from their oil tankers that could basically launch up from the oil tanker, get a swath view, 360-degree view, and then land back, pass that intelligence to different operations that are going to try to keep those tankers from getting intercepted. Maybe they'll even try to turn it around. But the U.S. Navy, I just don't see them giving any ability of Venezuela to be tipped off soon enough to turn around and make it back to the port. I think once the U.S. Navy gets your number, it's over. It's not going to go well. So the U.S. response, they've got the USS Gerald R. Ford, that carrier strike group, F-18s on there. So the F-18s are great reconnaissance aircraft as well. Blast those off. Get them aerial refueled. Tankers can go and hover over Puerto Rico, that area. They could basically do a racetrack pattern over there, refuel the F-18s. The F-18s go do reconnaissance. The RQ-4 is up there doing reconnaissance. That's huge. But you guys have heard me talk about one of the main stars of the show, and that's the P-8 Poseidon. That plane is a beast. So you could have multiple of those circling around. They could drop sonobuoys to track different frigates. They could be tracking every asset of the Venezuelan Navy at all times, basically being the big brother looking over the shoulder of the Venezuelan Navy like, hey, bro, I'm still here. I still got you. And then MQ-9s, you've got unmanned surface vessels like Sea Hunter drones, manta ray drones, which I'm going to do a full video on the manta ray here in a couple days on how that could be being used against the cartels right now. So stay tuned for that. And then again, all these are connected and tied in with an Aegis combat system that talks to each other, that passes real-time information. But basically the way that this could heat up, I want to give you guys a quick situation on how that could happen. What we might see out of Venezuela, and this is a hypothetical situation, are boat swarms. So when you look at the tactics from Iran, the way that they think of targeting the U.S. Navy is boat swarms. So they want to get as many little boats as possible. A lot of them might even be unmanned. I mean, if they have that capacity to build that. So they might start doing, C4 explosive-laden boats that they think could swarm in on some of the bigger boats. And if they take out one of the big ones, maybe they think that'll make the U.S. stop. Honestly, it would just make the U.S. go harder. But again, throughout time, you can see some of these guerrilla warfare type forces, they think that if they take out one main thing, kind of like, a Pearl Harbor type situation, if the Japanese are sitting there strategizing, if we take down Pearl Harbor, they're going to give up, they're going to surrender. No. The U.S. military doesn't stop. And the U.S. military just keeps going. But what their tactics likely going to be is boat swarms. So think dozens, maybe 50 of these smaller boats that try to swarm in on a larger vessel. That's something that you could definitely see. So when it comes to countering that, a lot of it's going to come down to a lot of the Aegis combat systems that can track multiple vessels, and then potentially even having F-18s up there airborne to strafe these different boats, basically unloading the entire naval warfare kitchen sink, having all the air assets airborne to strike a boat swarm. So that's something I'll throw out there. Strafing boats and fighter jets is it's a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoy it. I did it in training and practice, but a lot of the boats have tactics themselves where they're going to try to not get hit, right? So they're going to be going all these different directions, trying not to get hit. That's kind of their main way to avoid getting struck, is just a erratic pattern, which they're all going to try to do. So these F-18 pilots are likely dialed in, they're honed in, they're focused in on these different boat swarm tactics. And I'll keep you guys posted as this develops. I'll probably do an update video on the Venezuelan Navy next week as well. Let me know what other topics you want me to cover. I'll probably release one more today at noon on the strikes that went down in Syria, taking down ISIS in Syria. So I'll do a update video on that today. I'll be back in the studio tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate having you here. Follow me on X, follow me on Instagram. Would love to see you guys over there. Thanks for watching. And then watch one of these videos that pop up right here. That's the best compliment you can give me. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.